Forte Catholic Radio. This is your host, Taylor Schroll. Happy to be in studio here today. Pre-recording, as we will, the next few shows because it is basketball season. And I'm coaching and we're in district. So we have shows every Tuesday night and basketball games every Tuesday night. So I will be pre-recording the next few weeks. We have a fun show lined up for you today. We got a couple of guests. Mr. Matt Rice, the bearded wonder of Bryan College Station. And also the general manager of this radio station, Thaddeus Romansky, to talk about an upcoming family retreat. So the theme of this evening is family. This past week, I've kind of taken up that challenge, and every time that I'm with my kids, I try to put my phone away, I try to put my iPad away, I try to put everything off to the side for at least 30 minutes or an hour or whatever, and just pay attention to them. So a couple of nights ago, I laid in bed with my son, and we had the board game Mastermind. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this game. It's actually a game that takes a lot of intelligence that a 3.5-year-old doesn't quite have. So what we did, you have these colored pegs, and we just worked on colors and numbers. So I'd be like, hey, put 2 purples in a row and then 2 oranges. He'd be like, okay, and then we'd do that. So we laid in bed for like an hour doing that. The next day, last night, we took him on quite an adventure. So my wife stayed home with our daughter, our youngest, and Christopher, who is turning 4 here in a couple of months. I took him to see his first movie in a movie theater ever. It was quite the experience. So we had to talk him up on it quite a bit throughout the week. Because if you can imagine, a kid going into a dark room with a huge TV and loud noises like that, may or may not, it'll either go extremely well or extremely terribly, right? So we explained it to him, and throughout the week, hey, you want to go see a movie with Daddy in the movie theater? Every other time would be yes or no. He just wasn't sure about the entire experience. So I took him to go see the movie Sing last night. We're sitting, I was very strategic about it. We went early enough to where the lights would still be on, a little bit. We went on a Thursday, early evening, in the middle of the school week. So not that many people were there, and it worked out perfectly because we walked in, the lights were on, and there were about, 8 other parents as smart as me to do this on a Thursday evening because we were all spread out throughout the theater. We had our big soda, we had popcorn, we had candy. We went all out for his first experience at the movie theater. So we get to watching the movie, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about this movie Sing. So if you care, whatever, spoiler alert for a kids movie that you may or may not care about the plot points for. But I did notice a couple of things. So, I'm making this concerted effort with my family in this new year, and there was a lot in this movie about family. So kind of the premise of this thing is that there's a guy, they're all animals. So there's this guy who has a theater, to put on productions and plays, and his dad ran it beforehand, and it was this great place when his dad ran it, and his dad entrusted it to his son. He had passed away, and so the son had been failing. He wasn't kind of living up to the standards that his father had set. So he's trying to come up with this idea of how to make this great show come together at the last minute. Kind of his final show, his final shebang. So what he does is he says, all right, I'm going to put out these flyers for a singing competition. And he's all he has left is right under $1,000. So he tells his, the lady that helps him at the theater is hey, print out these things. And for instead of writing 1,000, she accidentally types 2 extra zeros at the end of it. So they puts out all these flyers that there's going to be a local singing competition for $100,000 prize winner. And the dude only has $1,000, right? So what's cool about the movie is that it brings all these different people who are coming to try out to win this money. And it brings all of them together. And you see each of their stories. So one of them, you see the relationship between her and her boyfriend. One, you see the relationship between a young boy and the men in his family that You see another one, it's a young girl, and you see all of her family. So I want to talk about a couple of those and just kind of see the things that I gleaned out of it. So first of all, talking about that issue where the leader of this theater is trying to live up to his father's standards, who has passed away. So, and people kind of poking pride at him. It's like, this used to be a great place, and now that you're running it, it's not that great. So all he wants to do is live up to his family legacy, to make his dad proud. And that's the entire premise of this whole movie, because the bank is going to come repossess the theater if he can't, start having shows that are making money. So, from the beginning, it's not looking well, because he looks like he's about to lose money throughout this whole process, because he only has $1,000. He's saying that he's going to give out $100,000. And so throughout the process of the movie, you just see how he's struggling. And at the end, obviously they take a turn for the worse, and the whole production goes kaput. Everybody finds out that that he doesn't have the money. People won't loan him the money. And everybody he asks to support him financially doesn't do it. So you can tell that he's just really struggling. And when all the fit hits the fan, that kind of thing, he's moves in with his neighbor or his friend because he needs a place to stay, and he just gets real depressed. And then what ends up happening is the cast comes back to him, and they say, okay, we're going to do this production anyway. And they kind of take some of the things that he used to lift them up when they were struggling. They use that same kind of language to lift him back up. And they end up doing this production. And at the end, it's this great production. The media's there to kind of make fun of it. And, the only people there in the crowd are the family members, right? And then it starts getting a little bigger and a little bigger, because these singers are just phenomenal. So it grows and grows and grows. And then obviously it's a kid's movie, so it's a great ending. All these people love this theater. And then this lady, one of the ladies who had turned down financing this theater and this production, comes to the theater and is like, okay, I'll do it. So they rebuild the theater. And that's kind of the great big ending, right? But so let's look at one of the other families. So there's a monkey, and I sound so silly talking about this stuff on the radio, right? It's like, there's this monkey, and he grows up, and his dad and his dad's friends, they're in a gang, and this monkey's in the gang too, right? So it's all just silly, but it's a kid's cartoon, so what am I going to do? So he's growing up, and he has to kind of choose between spending time working on the singing competition or spending time helping his dad and his dad's friends rob places. That's what they do. They're in this gang, and they're stealing gold. They're stealing all these kinds of things. So he's at this moment where he's like, okay, he's helping his dad with this heist where they're trying to steal all this gold, and he's the getaway car. So his dad leaves as he's going to start this heist. He's like, okay, we'll be back in exactly 37 minutes. So you need to be here to drive us away. And so the young monkey man is sitting there, and he's like, I have a decision, mate. Because the singing show is going on across town at the same exact time where they're having this tryout. So he's like, okay, do I stay here with my dad and help him rob this bank, or do I go over there and pursue my passion? And so he's like, you know what? I can do both. I can have it all. So he drives across town. He gets to the singing competition. He does his singing thing. Everybody loves it. Then he starts driving back, and he hits traffic. So he doesn't get back in time. So whenever his dad and his dad's friends get out with the gold, the getaway car's not there. So the cops end up coming to take him, and then they go to jail. So now this young kid is dealing with the fact that, he just got his dad arrested. What his dad was doing was obviously wrong and not a good thing, but he just got his own dad arrested. And you can imagine how the dad felt towards his son because of that. So in the next scene between the two of them, the son goes and visits the father in prison, through the glass, and he's talking to the father saying, Dad, I'm so sorry. And the dad says, well, where were you? And he's like, well, I was at the singing competition. And the father disowns him. He's like, you know what? I'm done with you. And he just gets up and he walks away, and he's real angry. So the kid walks away sad, right? He just lost his only family, kind of partly because of his fault, but really ultimately it's the dad's fault because he's a criminal. So fast forward to the final showing where there's the big grand finale, and the big dad, the big gorilla, is watching on TV, and he sees his son performing at the end, and he like rips the bars and the concrete off the wall, and he goes through this police chase, and helicopters are trying to chase him as he like flips and runs across town, across the ceilings of the ceilings of buildings and all these things, and he's essentially making things worse for himself, or making things harder on himself by breaking out of jail, obviously. But he goes over, and there's this sweet moment where right after his son performs, he comes and he sneaks into the theater, finds his son backstage, and he tells his son that he's proud of him. And it's one of those things where it's like, this shouldn't be so touching because this man just broke out of jail, but it was this touching moment because it's like the father who, like, I was projecting a little bit or trying to put too much into it, but I could see, like, you could tell that the father was like, I don't want the life that I live for my son. He's like, I want something better for my son. So, he embraces his son and tells him how proud of him he is and that he's going to do great things, essentially. And then he's like, well, I better get back to jail now because they'll be missing me, right? So he leaves. So there was that great moment there. And with both of those guys, with the leader of the theater and with this young man who had the decision to make on whether to support his father or not in his criminal activities, it was interesting for me because both of them just wanted their dads to be proud of them and to kind of live up to the standards that their father made for them. And I was like, man, this was touching for me because like I don't know about all of you, but like I want to make my dad proud too, right? I want to make my father proud and live. He did a lot to set me up for the life that I have now, and I want to live in a certain way. And it's always great to hear that your father's proud of you, right? And just seeing like how that father, the gorilla, risked everything to go tell his son how proud he was of him. That was just such a cool moment for me. And I was like, you know what? Like, I want my son who's sitting next to me in this movie. It's like, I want my son to know that that I love him, that I'm proud of him. So that's something that like I want to keep consciously in my head and continuing being intentional with him, spending time with him so that, I don't have to be all dramatic and break out of jail to go, race across town to tell him I'm proud of him. That's something that I want to do in my everyday life. So, there's another one that's interesting because that's like kind of the perspective of a father, perspective of somebody trying to do something and live up to their father's standards. There was this pig. This is so, it feels really weird talking about this, pigs and monkeys or whatever. But there's this lady who's like so busy taking care of kids. Her and her husband have 25 little piglets, right? So like it shows her every morning getting the kids ready for school, they get home, getting them ready for bed, cooking all the meals and all of those things, right? I doubt they ate pork, but that's beside the point. So she got into this competition because she had a great voice and like she wanted to pursue singing, but then, she got into this, she got married and started having all these little piglets, and then that was her main focus. Obviously, that was her vocation, is raising these children and being a mother and a wife. But she's like, look, I can do this, right? So she sets up this like ridiculous, like it like animates all that she does, so it feeds all that, like this pulley system, automated system that she pushes when she leaves the house in the morning. It feeds all the kids and it talks to them and it washes all the dishes and all of these things. And she's, working real hard to pursue this singing career. And it was interesting too to see her husband, because her husband, would come home from work just absolutely exhausted, trying to provide for his family with these 25 piglets and providing for his wife. But you can tell that there's like a strain in the husband and the wife's relationship. Not that they're mad at each other, but like the wife's stressed out with working with the kids and the dad's stressed out with, the burden of working and providing for the family that large, right? And so we get to this final scene where she performs for the last time, and she's just amazing. She's a rock star and everybody loves her. And then like all of her piglets, run up to the stage after she finishes, and they just kind of embrace her. And the husband, you can tell he kind of just like snaps out of it, where he's like, wait, what? Like, what just happened, right? Who is this lady? And he runs up to her and he embraces her and he kisses her, and then the curtains close. And it's just this really sweet moment. And I think I've gotten caught in that before, and I'm guessing that many of you have been caught up in that. Like whether you're a wife and you maybe you had dreams that you want to pursue, and you have kids, and now you're focused on the kids, and you're like, well, I want to do this other thing too. And maybe you're a husband and a father, and you're working hard and trying to provide for a family, and you're just, it's not that you're mad at your husband or you're mad at your wife, but there's just like something like lacking in there because you're not able to focus on each other. So that's another thing that, sitting here watching this kids movie, that I'm like, okay, this is another thing that I want to focus on in this 2017. It's like, I want to like not be, I saw myself in that husband, right? Like going to work and coming home, being tired, and like not having all the energy for my kids or all the energy for my wife. And, when it all comes down to it, like that's the most important thing is, obviously my spiritual life. And then like being a husband and being a father, right? So that's just something that I'm just kind of refocusing on this year. And I don't know if any of these stories of pigs or monkeys related to you at all or not, but I'm guessing that one of these stuck out to you. If not, I've got one more, and it's a story about elephants. Okay, so the youngest girl, she's probably in her teens. She is real shy and doesn't want to sing, and then finally she ends up performing. She has a great voice, and the cool thing about her is that she has like brothers, sisters, mom, dad, grandpa, aunts and uncles supporting her, and they're probably like the most healthy family throughout the whole movie. They're always encouraging her, like going to bat for and wanting her to perform well. And it was just so neat to see at the end, there's just rows and rows and rows of all these elephants there to support her. And like, I don't know how your holidays were and spending time with your family, if you have a great relationship with your family, if you don't have a great relationship with your family. But like, that's the goal, right? The goal is to be like these elephants and sing. And what I mean by that is like where we're all one unit, where we're all supporting one another, whether that's in our own families or as a church, being able to embrace people, to encourage people, and to keep it going. So that was our first segment. We got through it, a segment all about elephants and bears and all of these things. We will be right back with an interview from the bearded wonder, Matt Rice. Welcome back to Forte Catholic. This is your host, Taylor Schroll. I am joined with local bearded wonder, Matthew Rice. Matt, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Taylor. More hair on my face than you do on your head.
That will always be true. So there was a picture the other day of me 8 years ago, and it was I had no beard and all this hair up on my head. The irony of all this is I had the thickest hair of all time. And I'm standing on the snowboard slopes and had all this hair up here, and everybody just said that like my head cracked, and it just like all my hair moved from my head
melted to your cheeks
to my face. Right. That's the only reason I grow it out, because the only place I can grow hair on my head. So we're not here to talk about beards. We're here to talk about you. We're here to talk about St. Monica's Army. So let's start with you. So who the heck is Matt Rice, for those who don't know?
So my name's Matt. I've worked in youth ministry for over 15 years, I think more than 16 or 17 years now. We founded Blaze Ministries about 5 years ago, working in youth ministry. And after a while, I just noticed that I needed to do some sort of ministry towards parents and with parents. I'm a father of 5 kiddos. My wife's a physician here in town. We've lived in this area for the last 8 years. So what else about me do you want to know, Taylor?
A Blaze Ministry sounds cool. I'll need to check it out at some point. But what else do I want to know about you? I want to know your deepest and darkest sins. We can do that next time you come on the show.
How about we do that after like heaven? Like when we get to heaven. We'll do that.
Yeah, we'll do that then. So The reason I have you on today is we want to talk about this ministry that you started just as a parishioner of St. Joseph's and Bryan called St. Monica's Army. So what is St. Monica's Army?
So anybody that's on Facebook and on Catholic World for a while has probably seen Brandon Vogt somewhere, either Word on Fire or promoting his book, The Return. And so I was really interested in that book, The Return. And so I got the book and I read it. And in the book, if you don't know, the book is all about bringing those fallen away Catholics back to the church, helping those of us that are in the church to get them back. And if every Catholic I know has someone in their family, in their life that has fallen away. I know that I have a mixed bag in my family. I've got some really hardcore devout Catholics in my family. Then I've got others that have just fallen away from the church. And so I was really interested in that book. And as I was reading the book, that it mentioned something about a prayer service for those who had fallen away. And I thought, man, that's a great idea. We need to do that. I want to do something about that. And so that was kind of the impetus behind St. Monica's Army, like why we wanted to do something.
Right. So I know that you set out for this to be a one-time event and you set it up. So like, what did that first event look like? What did y'all do? And what was the point of it? Like, what were you trying to accomplish with that event?
Sure. Yeah. Like you said, the initial thought was that it would be just a one-time event. And so I asked Monsignor John if he'd be interested in purchasing books, and he did. He went out and bought copies of The Return to hand out. And so the idea was to get those of us that have, family members or loved ones that have fallen away from the church, to get them together, have a brief talk, give them, some inspiration, and some practical things of what they can do to get their loved ones back to the church, and then provide a time for prayer. So we actually, created prayer cards with St. Monica on them, and on the back there's a place for them to write the name of their loved one. And so at the event, we get together and everybody writes down on this card the name of their loved one. And then we had a period of adoration at the meeting. And during adoration, we asked them to come up and lay their names, at the feet of Jesus, on the altar, next to the monstrance or on the monstrance. And it was actually just really beautiful to see all these people stepping forward and laying their names. And some people wrote down, 2 or 3 different cards. And so there were about 80 people that showed up, and I looked at the number of cards, and there had to have been 300 cards or 200 names up there. And so these 80 people represented 200 to 300 other people. And so the whole idea was, in my mind, was that I want to have more than just me praying for my loved one. I want to have other people praying for my loved ones. And so the idea was that they would write the name on the card, put them on the altar, and at the end of the night, everybody would come up and take a different card. So then at the end of the night, not only are you praying for your loved one, because you're not going to forget to pray for them, but someone else, some random person that showed up that same night to pray for their person, they're also praying for your loved one. And that builds up that army of prayer warriors out there praying for your loved one, and you're praying for others.
Oh, cool. I always got the St. Monica connection, but I never knew where the army part came from. So that's really interesting that it's kind of a network of people praying for these people who have fallen away from faith, fallen away from the church. So I might understand the St. Monica part, but many people listening today might not. So we get the army part. So why St. Monica? What about her made you want to name this ministry St. Monica's Army?
Sure. So if you don't know, St. Monica is actually St. Augustine's mom. And Augustine, before he became, one of the greatest saints in the church, he was not. He was a pretty bad dude. He loved women, and he actually, had a child out of wedlock. And he was just out there doing things that a mom wouldn't want their son to do. And so Monica prayed fervently. And I think it was 17 years before her son converted. And then it was another 15 years before her husband converted. So I think it was like over 30 years that Monica prayed, and she only had 2 converts.
So what you're saying is when I pray for something for 2 days and I don't get an answer, I shouldn't quit?
Yeah, keep praying, please.
Okay.
So the hope is that and I know that sometimes that can actually be kind of draining. Like, wow, I don't want to pray for 17 years but actually, if you think about it, yeah, you do. You want to pray for that long. And so that's the connection with St. Monica is, St. Monica prayed fervently for her son to convert, and he did. And so we want to align ourselves with St. Monica. We want her to pray for us. We want to be part of her army praying for those to bring them back to the church.
Yeah, so not only did he convert, he became a bishop, he became a doctor of the church. Like, that lady could do some praying, man. The prayers of a mother are a big deal. So I know that, you put this out to anybody who has had loved ones fall away from the church, but I know that you started off with a very specific group of people. So why don't you explain to people like that group of people that you specifically invited to that first event?
Yeah, actually, you've forgotten about that, Taylor. Thanks. When we initially started St. Monica's, I thought, when I was thinking about Brandon Vogt and this book that he wrote, I called him, or emailed him, and I said, you have got to get this book into the hands of every single confirmation coordinator, because that is one of the last times that we see so many members in our church. Like, so many people leave the church after confirmation, and we have their contact information, we have their emails, we have their phone numbers. Why the heck aren't we reaching out to them? And so that was the initial impetus. It was like, you know what? I'm going to go back into the last 2 or 3 years of all of the confirmations at St. Joseph's School. We're going to contact their parents. We're going to contact the students, and we're going to invite them to come, because like statistically, that is the largest, drop off from the church. And so that was the first thing. We sent out emails and letters, and Monsignor John wrote the letter and signed the letter, and we sent it out to, I think, 200 to 300 people, inviting them to come.
Yeah, because I think I've even said before on the show that same idea of, people get confirmed, somewhere around 15, 16 years old is pretty typical in America. And like from 18 to 23, like from that age, from the 15 to 18 to 23 years old, 80% of them aren't practicing Catholics anymore. Yeah. Those are the new numbers, and that's just like scary, right? Which has always led me to think of the importance of young adult ministry, because a lot of these kids came through youth ministry, they came through youth group, so they need to get connected, whether they go to college or whether they go into the work. But I think a link that was missing for me was this idea of going to their families and going and reaching out to them, be like, look, we know you've fallen away. People fall away all the time. St. Augustine was gone for a long time. But let's address that now. So I know it's grown to a little bit bigger of an idea, but so you started off with this one event. You said 80 people came, right?
Yeah.
So you were like, we should probably do something again, right?
Yeah,
so y'all are
absolutely.
So what's the plan now?
Well, it wasn't just the number of people that we saw there that triggered it. It was actually the emotion, the raw emotion that we saw in the people there. I mean, these people are hurting. I mean, if you think about it, a mom or a dad who ushered their children in through the sacraments of initiation, their kids are in go through confirmation, and then their kids are gone. Like these moms and dads, these aunts and uncles and grandparents are hurting, for their loved ones to come back to the church. And it was just evident and raw, there at that night, to go up and lay my name on the altar and then turn around and see, moms and dads just in tears, in the pews. And it was like, man, we've got to do this more than just this one time. And so I sent out a poll because I wasn't sure how often people would want to do it, because it's kind of an investment on a weeknight. It's 2 hours that we'd come, or an hour and a half that we'd come and pray. And so I sent out the kind of a poll to everybody, how often would you want to meet? And I was like, and this is sort of my own selfishness on my own time. I was like, man, please just say once a semester, but they came back and they wanted to do it, at least, every other month. And I was like, wow, they want to meet, they need this. This is something that's actually meeting a real need, in the lives of people. And so, it was about half and half. One of them said every other month, and the other half said every month. And so it's like, you know what? Let's see if we can find a time where we can meet every month, because we had already started to see fruit come from these meetings. And it was amazing. Like, so for me, the day after the meeting, it may even have been that night. It was crazy because I wrote my brother's name down, and I put it on the altar. And that night or the next day, my brother's not into Christian music. He never has been ever. But he met a girl, and it's amazing what women can do in our lives, but
best evangelist, and they bring about the most conversions of anybody, right?
But like she introduced him to this band called Need to Breathe, and I'd known about the band for years. And he just sent me this song. He's like, hey, there's this song that made me think of you, and it was Brothers, by Need to Breathe. And it was just one of those things. It was like, holy moly, God, like, okay, you're showing up. This means something. And then we had another meeting in December, and after that meeting, one of the mothers and fathers stopped me afterwards, and they said, "Hey, I just want to let you know our daughter, who has been away from the church for however long, wants to get her marriage blessed. She wants her baptismal certificate, and she wants to get her children baptized." Oh, wow. And I was like, "Whoa!" like okay, this is absolutely worth doing monthly.
Be doing something right.
Yep. So anyway, and then like even on that, like just on me personally, after that second meeting, one of the names that I wrote down and put on the altar, like called me within the next couple weeks to have a meeting. And this is someone that I've spiritually mentored for years, so it's just amazing. Like God, like there's something about like verbally or, writing something down, a petition down, whatever God, whatever you want God to do and doing it together in community that, God's like, yes, that's what I want. I want this too, and he makes it evident, in answering those prayers.
Yeah. All I've gotten from this is I should probably pray more.
yes, you should.
And prayer works. I'm glad to hear
it does work.
That the prayer's working, that this ministry's working. So if people are listening locally, like we've already heard about what you did the first time you wrote the names down. You said somebody spoke and then you did prayer. So 2 hours of praying sounds like a long time. So why don't you explain like a little bit more in detail what you do? Like if a parent or somebody wanted to come to the next one, what y'all do, or if somebody's listening in Idaho, if they want to copy this idea,
Sure.
what does it look like?
Yeah. So we, what we're going to do moving forward, and what I wanted to make it was something relatively simple that we could continue to do that didn't take a whole lot of, time to invest into it. Because honestly, like sometimes the most simple prayers, the most simple things we do have the greatest effect, in our lives, in our spirituality. And so I coupled it with the daily mass that we have there at St. Joseph. So the Tuesday before the last Sunday, just for scheduling reasons, that's the day that we did. So the 6 p.m. mass, we meet at the 6 p.m. mass. We celebrate mass together. The intention for that mass is focused on, our loved ones who have left the church. And we actually have musicians there so that the mass is a little bit more than a typical daily mass. There's some praise and worship involved. And right after that, we go into a period of adoration, so we have 6 to 6:45-ish for mass. And then we stay until 8:00. So we have about an hour and 15 minutes of prayer before the Eucharist and adoration. And during that time, we have praise and worship songs, and we have the chance for people to go up and lay the names of their loved ones on the altar and trade out with other names. And it's it's become kind of a come and go sort of a thing. So if you don't have time for the whole thing, and not that I would, suggest skipping mass and coming for the adoration, but, some of us work, and just can't take that much time. And so some people do come, after mass, and they come for adoration, they come for the prayer time.
Oh yeah, I got you. So with people people are able to come in and out, y'all are praying, you're going to mass, you're doing the petitions, and then somebody's sharing every time, like kind of a message of encouragement or a message of like what to do in those situations, right?
Yeah, it's funny. So the last time I actually had not planned on saying anything before the last time we met, but I mean, the Spirit just moved me, and I just stood up and said something. So it's going to be a really relatively short reflection, like 5 to maybe 10 minutes anytime that we get together. So it's not going to be a big, long presentation or talk. And anyone that doesn't have a copy of the book, the return, when they're there, they can get a copy of the book. Okay,
I got you. So I want to ask and kind of wrap up with this is, if people that are listening now and they're like, oh, this is a cool idea, or I'm sure as people are listening, they've thought of people in their life that have fallen away. So number one, they could come to this event. So we could talk about when that is. Number two, they could get that book and read that book. But if you just had the number one thing to encourage somebody who has had somebody fall away, why don't you share that with us now?
One of the, and I don't know if it's something that I would tell them to do, but even if it's cautious, have hope. That's even this mom and dad whose child is coming back to the church. She said, we are cautiously hopeful, and that's okay. It's okay for us to kind of guard our hearts a little bit on that, and to be cautiously hopeful that something's going to happen, but have hope, have that hope, even if it's a tiny little bit mustard seed, have that hope that God is going to do something, that God is going to move. You mentioned something earlier with regards to if someone's in, Ohio or whatever, Idaho, I think you might've said, but if
Idaho is my second favorite state in the union.
Okay. Just because of the potatoes or what?
Sure.
Okay. So I actually had the artist that designed all of our materials. I asked her to bundle it all together. I haven't done it yet, but I wanted to post it on the Ablaze website so that anybody can just download the package, of what I did on our first night, the copy of the prayer card, the art from all that stuff. And so they can just replicate it and do it. If they get a copy of the book, they don't even need the book, if they want to do this prayer service. So
you heard it here first. It's free for now. I might talk to him and try to monetize it somehow, but if you do it right now, it's free. So for those who are local, how can they get involved in this? When do y'all meet? How can they stay connected?
Sure. So on the St. Joseph website, you can look under ministries, and it's called St. Monica's Army. And on there, you can sign up for the newsletter. And I send out just an email once a month at the most. I might send out a reminder closer to the event just so that people know. So that's the easiest way to get connected. We meet the Tuesday before the last Sunday of the month. And right now we're in the chapel, the Adoration Chapel, but I truly expect that we're going to outgrow that space and need to move into the main church relatively soon.
So no one is going to ever remember Tuesday before the last Sunday?
Yes.
So I'm going to make a song real quick. Tuesday before the last Sunday. Now you'll never ever forget because you heard it from your good friend Taylor on Forte Catholic.
Good job, Taylor.
Matt, thanks for coming today. Thanks for doing what you're doing at St. Monica's Army. Thanks for sharing this hope that we can have in and giving us the action plan to just pray for these people to get connected to St. Monica's Army. So yeah, thanks again for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. All right, guys, we will be right back with our final segment here in just a few minutes. Stay tuned. We're back for the last segment of tonight's Forte Catholic Radio. Your host is still Taylor Schroll. We didn't change during the break, so I'm back. Our first segment, we talked about the movie Sing. I took my son last night, and we talked about the different family aspects in that movie. It was pretty interesting talking about families of elephants and pigs and mice and what they meant to be hid by spiritual life yesterday. So if you missed our second segment just a second ago, Matt Rice came on and talked about St. Monica's Army. It's a ministry to families who have had people fall away from the church within their family. It's a prayer ministry to pray for those people who have left the church. So I want to kind of finish up today's show talking about another opportunity for families and for growth as a family in this new year. So Red Sea Radio, which is where I am recording from their studio currently, that's whose airwaves you are listening to. If you're listening live or if you're listening to the podcast, it comes from them. So you can give them a nice little thank you in your prayers today. So they are hosting a family retreat here in a couple of weeks, and I'll get you some more information about it, what it is, how you can sign up, all that here in just a few minutes. But I'm actually going to be one of the speakers at this family retreat, and I'm really excited about it. And we've been working on it for a couple of months now and deciding, what's going to happen on the weekend and what we're going to be, what's the whole purpose of it, and what are we going to be talking about, and how can we all come together and have our families grow and also help other families in our neck of the woods grow as well in this new year. So I've been kind of praying with and bouncing ideas off of people and about what I'm going to say, because I'm doing the keynote the first night and the keynote at the end. So kind of bookending the thing. And I'm like, okay, what's the biggest thing that people need to hear? So one of the things that just came to me recently was actually this week, as I was kind of planning these talks, preparing these talks, trying to narrow down and really nail down what I'm going to be talking about. One of the things that I want to address is this idea from this book that my wife and I read when we were engaged. So when she was my fiance, we read this book together as part of our marriage preparation. I've joked about our marriage prep before, but this is something that we just decided to do on our own. And it's this book called Love and Respect. It's by this non-denominational guy named Dr. Emerson Eggerichs. He has the word egg in his last name. He wins. He just has the word egg in his name. So he gets the name trophy, I guess. I don't know. I'm really tired if you couldn't tell so far today. So we're pushing through this. But after being out late and watching Sing with my son last night. So this book by Dr. Emerson Eggerichs has its focus on one chapter in the scriptures. So this book has like 300 pages in it, and it's focused on one idea from the scriptures. And it's from a scripture that is often, rubs people the wrong way when they hear it. So it's from Ephesians chapter 5. It's this section of talking to wives and husbands, and it's kind of contentious because of the second line. It says wives should be subordinate to their husbands as to the Lord. So I want to look at that, explore what it means for your family, what it means for my family, and how this book really helped me and my wife set up our marriage. And what's cool is I've not just sharing this on the radio, I've shared it before with other of my friends who have been engaged. I shared the book with them, and they just ate it up too. So I hope that it encourages you, whether you're dating or you're engaged or you've been married for a year or you've been married for 40 years. Some of the stuff that I learned in this book have just been super impactful on my marriage. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. If you're driving, just listen to me. If you're not driving, I'd encourage you, I really would, to pull out your Bible or open up your Bible on your Bible app on your phone. We talked about the YouVersion Bible app last week. I just love it. It's actually what I have it pulled up here on my computer. So Ephesians chapter 5, we're going to start in 21, the verse before the contentious one, because I think, you want to talk about people taking things out of context. Everybody kind of gets an uproar about 22 because it seems like, oh, that's not showing equality between men and women. Well, here you go. In 21, it says, be subordinate to one another out of reverence for Christ. So if you think it's one-sided, you just have to look one verse before, like be subordinate to one another. Like, so in a relationship, like I should, what love is wanting what's best for the other, right? So I should be putting myself second and her first, and she should be doing the same thing, right? So that's how we can grow in love for one another. So that's the first thing, just right off the bat. I would just laugh when people get upset about that. So like, just look at the verse before it. We're both like, I'm supposed to be subordinate too. So here we go. 22, wives should be subordinate to their husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, just as Christ is the head of the church, he himself the Savior of the body. As the church is subordinate to Christ, so wives should be subordinate to their husbands in everything. So it is saying that husbands do have a leadership quality in the home. And so often we see this, that it's not that way, that especially when it comes to faith and to spirituality, that the wife it tends to be the leader way too often. So this is, I think this is more of a call to the husbands to stand up and be the leader, to stand up and be the head, just as Christ is the head. And if you think about that, like, people try to use all these verses as, trying to say that men and women aren't equal, or the Bible is saying that men are superior to women. But we've already kind of addressed part of that. I'm going to just kind of attack it from another angle, is that, how does Christ lead the church? Like, he does so lovingly. He does so sacrificially. He's not doing it so that he can be, big macho man and boss people around. He does this out of love. He leads out of love. He's a great leader. And that's like the leadership that he has is the leadership that men as husbands should be imitating and should be emulating. So it continues, and then it talks to the husbands. In verse 25, it says, husbands, love your wives, even as Christ loved the church and handed himself over for her. So, we just went through that section of Paul talking to the wives. Now he's talking to the husbands. Love your wives. It's like, okay, we can all walk around and say, I love my wife. When we can mean it on a scale of 1 to 10, we can mean it, most of us mean it 7, 8, 9, 10, depending on our mood, whatever, right? But we shouldn't just love our wives where we can just walk around and say, oh yeah, I love my wife. We should love him as Christ loved the church and handed himself over for her. So like, he gave his life. He gave literally all of his 33 years and then literally gave his life up on the cross for his bride, the church. And that's the sacrificial kind of love that we as husbands should have. He says the point of this was to sanctify the church, cleansing her in the bath of water with the word, that he might present to himself the church in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. So, like, our goal as husbands is to do this for our wives, to help sanctify her, to share the word with each other, to so that in the end that we can present our wives in holiness and splendor to God, whenever we pass on, right? Like the goal of relationships is to get each other to heaven. Like that's my role as a husband, to get my wife, to help get my wife and get my kids to heaven. And she's doing the same thing. She's trying to get me to heaven and trying to get our kids to heaven. We're doing that together. So he continues, so also husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. I mean, this is the whole thing, the two shall become one flesh. So if you don't love your wife or you're not being loving to your wife, you're really not being loving to yourself, right? It's kind of funny because the whole happy wife, happy life thing kind of comes into this. Because if you're not loving your wife, who is part of you, who is one with you, then you're only really hurting her, but you're also hurting yourself, right? It says in 29, for no one hates his own flesh, but rather nourishes and cherishes it, even as Christ does the church, because we are members of his body. And then in 32, it says that this is a great mystery, but I speak in reference to Christ and the church. In any case, each of you should love his wife as himself, and the wife should respect her husband. And I think because people get so worked up about the first part that we miss this last verse. And I want to just park on this last verse for a second, because the whole premise of this Dr. Emerson Eggerich's book is this love and respect thing. And if you've heard of the love languages, it's kind of this idea of, okay, if my love language is quality time, like I want to receive love that way, but it's also the most natural way that I give love. Like, because I experience love by having people spend quality time with me, and therefore I just expect that everyone wants quality time as their love language, right? But maybe if Jake's love language is touch, maybe he doesn't want to spend quality time with me, right? Maybe he'd rather just me give him a little bro hug and then we move on, and that's how he feels loved, right? So he kind of took that same idea and put it onto this verse, saying that each one of you should love his wife as himself, and then the wife should respect the husband. And what he was saying is, husbands, guys, are used to like receiving love as respect. So respect is a real big thing for men. It's big in sports. It's big in the workplace. Like, you want to respect your boss. You want your boss to respect you. And then for the wives, like wives ladies tend to be more feelings and like feeling things and lovey-dovey and that sort of thing. So on this verse, what he's saying is that men receive love through respect and therefore want to give love as respect, not necessarily lovey-dovey. Wives want to receive love as the lovey-dovey and the feeling, but that's also how they give love. And neither of those things are bad, but what he's calling us to is to recognize that like the deepest desire of a woman's heart is to feel loved, is to have these things like the love languages, the quality time and touch and all of these other love languages. I can't remember the other ones because those are mine too. Quality time and touch, right? And then kind of the interesting part for us as we were engaged is this part that it's interesting that Paul doesn't say husbands love your wives loves your husbands, or husbands respect your wives respect your husbands. Like he's very specific in what he says to each one, right? Because I think it's harder for me to show my wife lovey-dovey love, because that's not what comes naturally to me as a guy. And it's a little harder for her. Like she wants to show the lovey-dovey love, but it's a little harder for her maybe to understand that my love language is respect. So, what was really eye-opening for us is, so let's just say, for example, and maybe this will make more sense for you as you're listening and you're thinking about your relationship. So let's say as a guy, my wife all day is being lovey-dovey to me. She'll send me a little note. She'll make my lunch. She'll do all these things, and she'll just, build me up and give me a hug, give me a kiss, all these things, right? And then she says one thing that's disrespectful. Like, man, that's going to ruin our whole day, right? Like if something that kind of eats at me as a guy, like, man, I'm not going to be in a good mood, right? let's say for the opposite, let's say I'm super respectful to my wife. I go and I do my job, and I'm providing financially. I cut the lawn. I do all these things that are respecting her. I come in, I give her a handshake. I'm very, very, very respectful. But if I don't do anything lovey-dovey, if I don't tell her I love her, if I don't give her a kiss, if I don't go spend time with her, if I don't do any of those things, that's not going to be the greatest thing for our relationship too, right? So this idea is like me as a guy, like I need to learn how my wife receives love and give her love that way. And then therefore, my wife has done the same thing. She's learned how I receive love and the importance of respect to me. And that's how another way that she can love me. So that was a really interesting aspect of this. Another thing that I want to get into real quick from this book, he talks about the crazy cycle. Because essentially what he says is, if you're in a relationship, somebody's going to do something wrong, right? So like what's going to happen is we're going to start spiraling down. Like, let's say I do something unloving to my wife. Her response is probably then naturally just going to be to do something disrespectful to me, or to say something disrespectful, or do something disrespectful. Then my natural response is not going to go and be loving to her. And then so it's just going to get worse and worse. We're going to spiral down and spiral down and spiral down. So like one of the big things that he says in the book is like somebody has to man up and stop the crazy cycle. So if my wife says something and I feel disrespected, I need to recognize that and then still be loving to her, to go give her a hug, to go spend time with her, and vice versa. If I do something unloving to her, like she should recognize that and be like, oh, I shouldn't be disrespectful or short or whatever. So that's been a huge thing for our relationship because, we're just like everybody else. We'll, do something disrespectful or unloving at times, but that's what we need to do for each other. And that's something that I hope that you can take away from this show is whenever you realize in a relationship you're in the crazy cycle, you got to man up, you got to woman up and be the one that stops it, right? So before we finish up tonight, I just want to invite you to this Red Sea Family Retreat. It's on January 20th and 21st. It is at St. Anthony's Catholic Church. If you want some more information, you can go to redsearadio.org. And up on the top, it says retreat. The third thing from the left, it says retreat. You can find all the information on that. It's open for the whole family. We have nursery for little kids. We have programming for younger kids and into the teens. And then obviously we have stuff for the adults. It's going to be a time of prayer, a time of getting to know each other and uniting as a community, a time of encouragement from speakers, great local people like Matt, who was here earlier, and Marcel Lejeune. It's going to be a great weekend. So we really hope that you can join us. It's real cheap, like for the whole family. If you sign up today, it's like $25. So come hang out with other Catholics in the area. And check it out. Food will be provided. It'll just be a great time to just come and renew and start off this new year right. So again, go to redsearadio.org if you want to find out some more information. And I just really hope to see you guys there. So this has been another week of Forte Catholic. Thanks for being with me here tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want some more, you can go to fortecatholic.com/radio. You can find all the old shows, listen on the podcast. Please do me a huge favor and rate the show on iTunes so it continue to grow in visibility so more people can listen to the show. Thanks for being with us. And until next time, see ya.